You ever look at what the government is doing and just think to yourself, wait, that makes absolutely no sense at all? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're unpacking a real-life political puzzle, a series of moves so contradictory, it's got everyone from Congress to the public just scratching their heads, trying to figure out what the game plan really is.
And it all really starts with this one massive question. On one hand, you have this huge military buildup that looks, pretty serious. But on the other hand, the official explanation feels, well, incomplete, to say the least. So let's break it all down piece by piece and see if we can get to the bottom of what's really going on.
So the first piece of this puzzle is this huge and mostly unexplained military operation that's taking shape down in the Caribbean.
And just look at the scale of this thing. We're not talking about a small patrol or some routine exercise. This is, by all accounts, the largest U.S. military presence in the Caribbean in decades. And when you move that many pieces onto the board, you really have to ask, what is the end game here?
So what is the play? Is it a full-on push for regime change in Venezuela? Or maybe some kind of complex psychological game to pressure Maduro's inner circle? Or is it just a very loud, very public display of force? The truth is, we don't really know, and the administration's official story only seems to make things even more confusing.
All right, so let's move on to the official reason we've been given for all this activity. The administration has framed this entire operation under one very specific banner. The official line, it's all about fighting the war on drugs, a campaign to disrupt the cartels. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? But as we're about to see, when you start to dig into the details of the campaign itself, that simple story, it starts to fall apart pretty quickly.
Because this isn't some bloodless campaign. There is a real and very lethal human cost. We're talking about over 80 people killed in these boat strikes. And when you look at who these people actually are, that whole war on drugs narrative really starts to crumble. And this, right here, gets to the heart of the problem. The targets aren't the drug lords sitting in their mansions, they're the low-level mules, basically the expendable grunts of the whole operation. So two massive questions pop up. First, are these strikes even legal under the rules of armed conflict? And second, are they actually hurting the cartels, or are they just doing their dirty work for them?
Okay, and just when you thought this whole situation couldn't get any more confusing, the White House throws a massive curveball, a move that seems to directly contradict everything they've been saying and doing about this supposed war on drugs. Here it is, the core contradiction laid bare. On one hand, you have this huge military campaign in the Caribbean, supposedly targeting drug traffickers. And on the other hand, at the exact same time, you have the president saying he's going to pardon a really high-profile convicted drug trafficker.
And who are we talking about? None other than Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras. I mean, a U.S. court found him guilty of taking huge cocaine-fueled bribes to let tons of cocaine, and get this, cocaine from Venezuela, pass through his country on its way to the U.S. He was staring down 45 years in federal prison.
And yeah, people definitely noticed. The New York Times called it a remarkable dissonance. And you really have to wonder, how can you be waging a war on drug traffickers with one hand while pardoning a man convicted of that exact crime with the other? It just doesn't add up.
But here's the thing that makes this even more fascinating. This pattern of a specific trigger leading to a massive, seemingly disconnected policy response, well, it isn't just about Venezuela. We're actually seeing the exact same dynamic play out right here at home.
So let's pivot for a second to a recent tragic event right here on U.S. soil and the sweeping policy announcements that came after. Again, what I want you to pay attention to is that same disconnect between the incident itself and the sheer scale of the proposed government reaction.
So, the trigger was the horrific shooting of 2 National Guard members by one individual who was a legal immigrant. But the response, it wasn't a targeted investigation into that specific event. Nope, it was a whole raft of proposals for a massive overhaul of the entire U.S. immigration system.
I mean, just look at the scope of these proposals. A complete freeze on all asylum decisions, a pause on migration from huge swaths of the world, a review of existing green cards. This is a sweeping, transformative agenda that goes way, way beyond the circumstances of that single tragic event that was cited as its cause.
So all of this brings us to the fallout. These contradictory signals and these disproportionate responses have left pretty much everyone, from the public to lawmakers, looking for some much-needed clarity.
And you can see it in the polling numbers. The public is clearly not on board. You've got widespread opposition to military action in Venezuela, and a strong majority disapproves of how immigration is being handled. But the most telling number here is this one. 3/4 of Americans, and that includes a majority of Republicans, simply want to know what is going on. They just want answers.
And this isn't just one party pointing fingers at the other. We're actually seeing Republican-led committees in Congress joining Democrats in the call for answers, especially on the strategy in the Caribbean. You know something is up when both parties start asking the same tough questions. So we are left with these fundamental, unanswered questions. What is the real objective in the Caribbean? Why do actions like the Hernandez pardon seem to completely sabotage the stated policy? Is there some kind of coherent long-term strategy here, or are we just watching a series of disconnected, reactive moves?
Ultimately, all of this really forces us to ask a critical question. When the official story makes no sense, what are we supposed to believe? Is this whole pattern of contradiction and chaos a sign of dysfunction? Or is there a hidden strategy at play that we just can't see yet? That's the puzzle we'll leave you with.